Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Rocket Summer, the final week of Rocket Summer 2025. This is a BookTube event created by Michael K. Vaughan to celebrate classic science fiction, decade by decade, all the way up to the 1960s. And I've been doing a lot of Rocket Summer reading without doing a lot of Rocket Summer recording, which is bad. I tried to do one yesterday, but of course yesterday was a science fiction scenario of its own, where the machines rose up and demanded their own rights and tried to unionize. I'm going to hope for better today. I don't know. I didn't have any warning yesterday. I don't know that anything will be better today, but we'll try. We'll try today. I threw a 1960s science fiction novel on the reading pile for last night. This, Farnham's Freehold, by Robert Heinlein from 1964. I haven't read this in ages, so it was an experience. It's got all the flaws of full-length Heinlein, of novel-length Heinlein, and a lot of the benefits as well. It's about a man named Farnham who receives a nuclear attack alert and hurries with his family into his carefully prepared shelter. But instead of just waiting out the fallout and maybe surviving the next few months when irradiated cannibals are running around wild, they are catapulted in time and end up in a dystopic future world in which a character is a dictator has shaped the world to his will. And they have to survive. They have to figure out their own personal connection to that character. They have to make their way back somehow. And the last time I read this was, I think I was prompted by the so-called end of history. I think I was prompted by the Berlin Wall coming down to read this. To read this, the last time I read this, I think, was then, because this book is saturated. It springs from a background terror that we all felt for decades and decades. That background terror is largely gone from the world today. That terror was the terror of nuclear war, the terror of a full-scale nuclear exchange that would devastate all life on Earth and certainly destroy all human civilization. We lived with that fear during the Cold War. We lived with that fear decade after decade, and it could press on you, especially if you paid attention to what it would be like, if you read up on what it would actually be like. Part of reading up on what it would actually be like exploded the then booming business of backyard bomb shelters, because they wouldn't do much. They would effectively prolong your agony. Pretty much anything would prolong your agony. You no matter how good a subterranean bunker you have, you still need air. You can't manufacture it on your own, and you still need air, which means you have to have some intersection with the topside world, even if you've got food to live on for years and water that self-reclaims and purifies and whatnot. I think that was why I read this then, because for a minute there it looked like maybe that fear was gone. Ironically, that background fear, the Cold War generation's fear of nuclear war, has receded, and yet the danger is greater than it was then. Back then, you had two massive superpowers staring at each other over stockpiles of nuclear weapons. It was the United States and the Soviet Union. And although they were inveterate enemies, the Soviet Union was also, for a large part of its lifespan, dependent on aid from the United States. And in addition to that, both were governed by career diplomats, by career statesmen, whether they slit throats to get where they were or shaved votes to get where they were. They were still, the leaders and the men supporting the leaders were people intensely invested in the idea of their own personal future. And none of that is true anymore. We have India and Pakistan have nuclear bombs, and they are staring at each other across the border of not only a stockpile of nuclear weapons, but also utterly irreconcilable religious differences that are eradication-based. It's a miracle that, in other words, that we're still here. In addition to which, non-state organizations increasingly have the ability to create or buy all the ingredients they would need to make an atomic bomb. We like to think that international regulatory organizations, that international regulatory watch bodies would be carefully monitoring the sale and processing of any materials that they have flagged as being necessary. You'd like to think that, but you can't think it anymore. You'd be delusional to think that's actually happening. And I mean, you have to think it in order to sleep at night, but you'd be delusional to think that's happening. The most powerful country in the world is still the United States of America. The United States of America has fallen to fascism, and under the fascist dictatorship that the United States currently works under, that dictatorship has eliminated food safety standards, food safety regulation standards. The next, or the shipment after the shipment that your grocery stores are working through now, is the last one in which those companies had to go through the expensive process of towing the line for safety inspections with the FDA. After the food shipment that's in your grocery stores now and the one after it, those companies, when they are not forced to spend that extra money to guarantee the safety of their product, they will not guarantee the safety of their product. And the regime in power in America does not care. It does not care about that. It's fired nuclear inspectors. It's fired disaster relief workers and disaster relief prediction forms, even though that's going to kill its own people. So the idea that the watch system involved to catch the rogue proliferation of nuclear weapons is still robust and in place is lunacy. So I don't know why that zeitgeist fear is not present, but it was definitely present here. And one of the things that Heinlein is wanting to do in this book, I think, is imagine a fate worse than death. To imagine, I mean, the imagination here was, at the time, was the nuclear wasteland that I alluded to. The bombs fall, the fallout falls, all agriculture ends, water is poisoned, there's no advanced technology anymore, and then what happens? In 1964, a lot of science fiction writers were still enamored of the idea of instantaneous, monstrous evolution, so you'd have bug-headed people or whatnot. But they were waking up from it to realize that that's not what it would be like. Of course, in 1964, they didn't have too many examples. Now we do. Now we have Chernobyl. So we know what happens in a small scale compared to a full-scale nuclear exchange. Chernobyl was a small scale, but we know pretty much how this stuff moves, how it works. And Heinlein was trying to imagine a dystopia on top of the dystopia. And it works. I honestly don't remember. I know this is going to put me out of grace with the sci-fi dudes, but they're intensely xenophobic anyway. They don't want to know my channel. They don't want me to talk about them or join them in their live streams, so I guess I should stop worrying about it. But I honestly don't remember off the top of my head if Farnham's Freehold started out as a short story. I strongly think it belongs as one. It's way too padded with Heinlein loving the sound of his own voice. Oh my God. Is there any science fiction author aside from Harlan Ellison who likes the sound of his own voice so much? And Harlan Ellison was able to control it. Usually he was able to control it. Heinlein does not control... Oh, well, Thomas Disch. But Heinlein does not control himself at all. So you get passages. I'll give you just one. This is the post-irradiated dictator talking. But I could come up with a dozen examples like this in the book. And I'm going to have to cut him off because he goes on for pages. A good eating apple, firm and sweetly tart, is never a product of nature. It is the result of long development from something small and sour and hard and hardly fit for animal fodder. Then it has to be scientifically propagated and protected. On the other hand, too highly developed plants or animals can go bad, lose their firmness, their flavor, get mushy and soft and worthless. It's a two-horned problem. We have it constantly with servants. You must weed out the troublemakers, not let them breed. On the other hand, these very troublemakers, the worst of them, are invaluable breeding stock that must not be lost. So we do both. The run-of-the-crop bad ones we temper and keep. The very worst ones, such as you, are encouraged to run. If you live, and some of you do, we can rescue you, or your strong get, at the later time and add you in, judiciously, to a breeding line that has become so soft and docile and stupid that it is no longer worth its keep. Of course, the character there is not talking about apples. He's talking about slaves, which are called servants in this book. And Hugh Farnham and his family, they want to escape, and they want to find a way that the mechanisms of their escape will not then fall into the hands of this horrible dictator. And it works. It's over-egged, like a lot of Heinlein, but it works. My major problem with it is that it works in the first 50 pages. And then it just keeps going on and on and on, in a way that I thought was not very profitable. But it was good that I revived this. I bought this book. When did I get this? I got this just a couple of years ago, specifically for June on the Range. So I'm glad that I got to it. That's great. I'm going to continue, provided my technology behaves itself, I'm going to continue for the rest of this week with 1960s science fiction stuff to wrap up Rocket Summer. So here's hoping, fingers crossed, I'll wrap this up, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.